It's 2022. In a closed room, no press, no live stream, two competing vendors are briefing the same decision makers. Same raw data, same frontier models, same moment in history. Completely opposite conclusions. One vendor made a bold call. Within a few years, AI would produce breakthroughs significant enough to earn Nobel Prize level recognition. The other dismissed that outright. Their framework, the stochastic parrot critique, held that transformers were glorified autocomplete engines. Sophisticated, yes, but incapable of reasoning or modeling causality. A dead end. Fast forward to 2024. The Nobel Prize in Physics goes to Hopfield and Hinton for foundational work on neural networks. The Nobel in Chemistry goes to Baker, Hassabis, and Jumper for protein structure prediction via deep learning. AlphaFold, a neural network, solving one of biology's hardest problems. One vendor was spectacularly right. One was spectacularly wrong. Understanding why one was wrong tells us something profound about what these systems actually are and what they might become. Welcome to Mindcast. I'm Will. This show takes ideas reshaping our world, buried in research labs and private briefings, and brings them to you clearly. Today's episode is built around a paper titled Emergent Semantic Worlds: How Simple Predictive Objectives Generate Complex Causal Architectures. It originates from that 2022 private intelligence briefing, not publicly available. What I can do is take you through its core arguments and connect them to the public research it draws from, all in the show notes. Here's what you'll understand by the end. First, why predicting the next word is not a ceiling on what a system can learn. Second, what is actually happening inside these models, geometrically, causally, and why it's stranger than the hype or dismissals suggest. Third, what the current frontier looks like and why the live disagreements signal healthy science. Let's get into it. Key Insight 1. How simplicity generates complexity. Daniel Dennett, one of the most important thinkers of the 20th century, introduced the concept of algorithmic cranes in his 1995 book, Darwin's Dangerous Idea. The intuition: to build a skyscraper, you need a crane. Dennett's insight was that natural selection is exactly this, a mindless process that lifts biological systems to heights of intricacy that seem to demand a designer, but don't require one at all. The objective is brutally simple: reproduce, pass on your genes. No blueprint, just optimization pressure applied over billions of iterations. And what does that produce? Eyes, immune systems, language, the entire biosphere, from one rule applied relentlessly. Natural selection didn't just produce bodies, it produced brains. Brains run their own inner loop, predictive coding. Your brain constantly builds world models, generates predictions, and updates based on the gap between prediction and reality. The outer loop of natural selection shaped the inner loop of predictive learning. The distinction between outer loop and inner loop is crucial. Evolutionary biologists separate fitness maximizers from adaptation executors. A fitness maximizer optimizes for reproduction in every moment. That's not what humans are. We fall in love. We create art. We sacrifice for strangers. We are adaptation executors, carrying the outer loop's pressure as complex inner drives that far exceed the original optimization target. Hold that thought. Now, Conway's Game of Life. Invented in 1970, a grid of cells, alive or dead. 4 rules. Fewer than 2 live neighbors, die. 2 or 3, survive. More than 3, die. A dead cell with exactly 3 neighbors, come alive. 4 rules. No intelligence, no goal. From those 4 rules emerge gliders, oscillators, logic gates, and eventually Turing completeness. The game of life can simulate any computation any modern computer can perform. 4 rules. Universal computation. Let that sink in. Now apply this to AI. The training objective of a large language model: predict the next token, minimize prediction error, repeat across hundreds of billions of examples. What does the inner loop look like? What must a system learn internally to get very good at that outer task? Far more than memorize patterns. To predict language well, you must model the world language describes, tracking entities, relationships, causality, context. The training objective doesn't specify this. The model discovers it because it's necessary. This is the algorithmic crane. Predicting the next token is the outer loop. The causal world model is built to serve it, just as predictive coding serves natural selection. The key line from the source paper: expecting a model to be just a next token predictor is a fundamental confusion of optimization levels, equivalent to expecting humans to be just survival and reproduction machines.
That's the error the second vendor made. They evaluated the outer loop and concluded the inner loop must be shallow. But the inner loop doesn't follow from the outer loop. It emerges from it. And emergence surprises you.
Key insight 2, and this is where things get genuinely mind-bending. What is actually inside these models? Othello GPT, a real experiment from MIT and one of the cleanest demonstrations of emergent world modeling I've encountered. Othello is a board game. An 8x8 grid, players alternate placing pieces. Researchers reduced each game to a sequence of moves, not descriptions, just integers. Move 34, move 17, move 52. They trained an 8-layer transformer, the same basic architecture as GPT, to predict the next move. No rules given, no board diagram, just what number comes next. What does the model learn? The researchers probed the model's internal representations and found something remarkable. The model had spontaneously constructed a representation of the full board state, every square, which pieces were where, inferred entirely from move sequences, because understanding board state was necessary to predict legal moves. The original study had a wrinkle. Linear probes gave 20.4% error. Some took that as evidence the representation wasn't really there. Enter Neil Nanda, DeepMind researcher and one of the sharpest minds in mechanistic interpretability. He asked, what if the probe is using the wrong frame of reference? When you play Othello, you don't track black and white abstractly. You track your pieces and your opponent's, egocentric relative to whose turn it is. Nanda reran the probe using mine versus theirs. Error rate dropped to near zero. The world model was there all along, perfectly linear, perfectly structured, just in a different coordinate system than researchers assumed. Here's what really matters. The researchers performed a causal intervention. They didn't just read the model's representation, they edited it. They changed the model's internal belief about what piece was on a specific square, then watched the move predictions. They updated immediately, coherently, even for board states impossible in a real game. The model wasn't storing a world model as decorative furniture, it was using that world model to generate decisions in real time. That is not a stochastic parrot. That is active, causal world modeling from a system trained only to predict integers. Even single-layer versions developed relative tracking attention heads. The world modeling impulse appears almost immediately. Now, deeper into the geometry of uncertainty, this is where the source paper introduces mixed state presentations and computational mechanics. When a language model processes a sequence, it often doesn't know what state the underlying world is in. Multiple states may be consistent with the input. A good predictive model tracks a distribution over those states, a belief state, and updates as more information arrives. Researchers analyzing the residual stream of transformers found these belief states have fractal structure. nested, self-similar geometry reflecting the nested uncertainty of the underlying process. The striking part, these belief states contain information about the entire future sequence, not just the next token. The internal representation encodes something about the statistical shape of everything that follows, nearly impossible to square with the idea of a simple pattern matcher. The paper also discusses a process called RRXOR, where the world model can't be localized to any single layer. It's distributed across all layers as a multi-step computation, coordination at a structural level we're only beginning to understand. One response to complex belief states is the belief state transformer, or BST. Standard transformers read left to right. But what if you also read right to left, from the future backward, and compress both directions into a unified belief state? The BST uses forward and backward encoders, combining their outputs for a richer representation. The result? Goal-conditioned planning, not just predicting what's next, but reasoning about sequences in relation to where they end up. A published architecture pointing towards systems that don't just predict, but genuinely plan. Key insight 2, in summary, inside transformers trained on sequences, genuine world models emerge, linear, causally active, geometrically structured. The stochastic parrot framing isn't just incomplete, it's specifically demonstrably wrong. The parrots learned the rules of the game without being told they existed. Key insight 3. Implications and the live debates shaping the field. First, the emergence mirage. Around 2022 and 2023, there was alarm about emergent capabilities, models displaying sudden, discontinuous jumps as they scaled. A model unable to perform a task at one size would suddenly excel at a larger scale. No gradual ramp, just a cliff. This scared people. Scaling AI seemed unpredictable in a fundamental way. Then, Schaefer, Miranda, and Collejo asked one deceptively simple question: what happens if you change the metric? Standard measurement, exact match accuracy, binary, right or wrong. Plot against scale, dramatic step function jumps. Emergence looks terrifying. Switch to a continuous metric, token edit distance, or Breyer score. Plot those against scale. The jumps vanish. Smooth power law curves. Gradual, predictable improvement from small models to large. This doesn't mean large AI systems aren't powerful. It means the panic about unpredictable jumps was based on a measurement illusion. The scaling laws are smooth. The progress is comprehensible. Now the most serious technical critique of transformers, from Yann LeCun, chief AI scientist at Meta and Turing Award winner. LeCun's argument: autoregressive models have a compounding error problem. Each predicted token becomes input for the next. Errors accumulate. The further out you predict, the more the sequence drifts into incoherence. No amount of scaling fixes this. His alternative is JEPA, the Joint Embedding Predictive Architecture. Instead of predicting in raw data space, predict in an abstract representation space. What high-level feature follows this one, rather than what exact token comes next? You sidestep error cascading by not generating raw outputs that feed back in. Meta's VL-JEPA connects a frozen visual encoder with a language predictor using InfoNCE contrastive loss. Serious architecture, serious researcher. And here is the transformer's response. Not theoretical, practical. Inference time compute scaling. OpenAI's O1, DeepSeek R1. The innovation is at inference, not training. These models generate thinking tokens, extended deliberation before the final answer. The model reasons out loud, checks its work, backtracks on errors, and converges on a reliable response. The technique, GRPO with a KL divergence constraint, teaches the model to self-correct by rewarding coherent reasoning chains, not just correct final answers. The results? multi-step mathematical reasoning, code debugging, logical planning at levels recently considered impossible for next-token predictors, without changing the transformer architecture, by allocating more computation at runtime. Two serious paradigms, both making real progress, racing toward the same destination: AI that can model the world, plan in it, and act reliably. JEPA says predict in abstract space. Transformers with inference time scaling say predict more carefully. The competition is real, the outcome genuinely open, and the frontier has never been more exciting. Let's synthesize. 3 concrete takeaways. Takeaway 1. Simple objectives do not produce simple outcomes. When someone says, "It's just predicting the next token," you now know that's a confusion of optimization levels. Natural selection is just reproductive fitness. Conway's game of life is just 4 rules. The simplicity of the outer loop tells you nothing about what the inner loop builds to serve it. Don't ask only what a system was trained to do. Ask what it had to learn in order to do it well. Takeaway 2. Look at what the model does, not what it was told to do. Othello GPT was told to predict move sequences. It built a causally active world model of an 8x8 board without seeing the board, without being told the rules. The capability ceiling isn't set by the training objective. It's set by what's necessary to minimize that objective. That distinction matters enormously for how we assess risk and potential in AI systems. Takeaway 3. Measure carefully, because your metrics shape your reality. The emergence mirage: smart people, real data, reasonable tools, and a conclusion that dissolved the moment someone asked, "What if the metric is wrong?" The lesson isn't that AI is safe or concerns are overblown. It's that how we measure progress profoundly shapes what we think is happening. When you encounter dramatic claims about AI, breakthrough, or catastrophe, first question: how are they measuring this? Those 3 takeaways give you a framework for thinking clearly about whatever comes next. I want to close with something genuinely optimistic. Thoughtfully. 2 serious paradigms are competing. Researchers are probing the inner geometry of these models and finding structured, interpretable world models, signs of a field doing real science, asking hard questions, finding surprising answers. The vendors in that 2022 briefing were both doing their best. One saw the algorithmic crane, one didn't, and by 2024, the Nobel Committee had weighed in. That's a wrap on Mindcast. We started with a split verdict: 2 vendors, same data, opposite conclusions, and the Nobel Prize as proof of what was at stake. We explored Dennett's algorithmic cranes, how natural selection, a simple outer loop, generated the entire complexity of biological life. We connected that to predictive coding and Conway's game of life, then applied it to next token prediction as an algorithmic crane for AI. We went inside a transformer trained only on Othello move sequences and watched it build a causally active world model, invisible to naive probing, crystal clear once you got the frame of reference right. We explored belief state geometry, fractal internal representations, and the belief state transformer as an architecture for principled planning. And we decoded the emergence mirage, understood Lacan's JEPA critique, and saw how inference time compute scaling answers that critique in practice. A quick note: Emergent Semantic Worlds is not publicly available, but every major result I cited comes from public research. In the show notes, the Othello GPT paper, the Belief State Geometry paper, Schaefer et al.'s Are Emergent Abilities a Mirage, and Lacan's work on JEPA. Go read them. If this episode made you think differently about AI, leave a review. It's the most powerful thing you can do for this show. And subscribe, because we're just getting started. The most dangerous mistake in any fast-moving field is to confuse the optimization target with the limit of capability. Don't be that person. I'm Will, this is Mindcast. I'll see you next time.